everybody, I'm back with another YouTube video. Now in today's video, guys, we are going to be ranking all of the Saw films, and this is a bit of a surprise one. Unless you were on my Discord at the time, that was probably the only hint that this was going to be coming. I was brainstorming ideas for a video since I was trying to get some gameplay videos in, and that completely failed. But I promise I will find some videos, edit them throughout the week, and get them out for you by Thursday and Friday. And actually, spring break is coming, so luckily I will be off those days, and I'll be able to stream those days as well. So this video, it was recorded on Sunday, but it probably won't come out till like Tuesday or something, depending on when I finish editing it. So yeah, today we're going to be ranking the Saw films, and no polls this week. Since I'm going to be doing some gameplay videos, some book reviews, and this video included. I'm probably going to film a book review today as well after the ranking. And I think that's all I have to say video-wise. Other than that, I apologize for not getting the gameplays in on the time. No guarantees, no promises when it comes to this channel, because sometimes I just completely fail. Even with the streams, I was even struggling to get a stream out. So I think that is all I have to say, other than just join the Discord. So it'll be in the description, and make sure you read the description and read my community post so that you get as much information as possible. As you can see, I'm going with a bit of a different style today. I just went bowling today, so that's why I wore this shirt, more of a casual retro shirt. But yeah, today we are going to be ranking the Saw films. So let's get right into it. Alright, so number 8 for me, this may come to a surprise for those of you who have watched Saw many times. I'm going to be going with Saw 3 on number 8. And the problem with Saw 3 for me was not the main character that we followed throughout the whole film. And you'll hear me talk about this a lot in this ranking, about how there's different styles for these Saw films. Sometimes you have a whole group together. Sometimes you have one guy that goes trap to trap, and then the Saw 1 was the only one that had, something completely different, which makes it really unique. This one, however, I did like, the formula that they did. It was kind of a new formula. They continued down that line. So Saw 1, you had the 2 characters, then you had a whole group of characters. Now you have one character that's seeking to, figure out if he wants to save these people's lives or not. And the reason why is his son had died from a bike accident, I believe. Someone ran him over while he was riding his bike. And basically all the people that are in the traps in this film were involved in the killing of his child. So he gets to decide the fate of his child or not. So you had, like, the judge, I believe, was in here. The guy who killed him was in here. And, various other people. The traps were really good. Don't get me wrong. I really like some of the traps. Especially the opening trap was really good, where the guy was in the chains and he was trying to get out. What else was really good? The girl freezing to death. You actually see that in the Dead by Daylight game. There's literally an ice room for that, as well as the rack. So in the Dead by Daylight game, most of the traps actually do come from Saw 3, because this one takes place mainly in the Gideon meat plant. Most of the others take place in a different building that doesn't look like the game, or it just takes place in the bathroom, like in Saw 1. So, I thought that was actually pretty interesting. The problem with this film is what happens in between, like, besides watching the traps. I just hate, I love Amanda Young's character, right? I like to see her in those first 3 films, was actually pretty interesting. But her Saw 3 performance was by far the worst. Her first one, not so bad. You didn't get to see a lot of her. Saw 2, very great performance. And this one, it was just really annoying seeing her get mad at it all the time. And when she was holding that girl hostage, she just kept annoying Kramer over and over again with her and stuff like that. By the way, the girl who's being held hostage was actually the guy's wife, who he meets at the end of the film. And I believe he ends up accidentally... No, Amanda ends up... Who does he end up shooting? I can't remember. I'm not going to go on and on about it. But anyways, that's basically how they connect the 2 storylines together. But it was just really boring and really annoying watching Amanda Young just, completely lose it throughout the film. I know some of you might find that interesting, but for me it was just really long and boring. And maybe because I was like tired when I was watching the film, but it just wasn't very enjoyable for me. So that's all I have to say about Saw 3. all I can say is that everything above this, at least it was enjoyable to watch, and it just wasn't boring and annoying watching Amanda do this throughout the film. So let's get on to number 7. All right, so for number 7, I suppose if I'm going to put Saw 3 below it, I have to put it next. The final chapter is definitely coming next, and this is probably one of the most hated Saw films out there, as I've came to learn. And I think it was because at this point in the Saw franchise, they were just extending it, and it was getting really, really annoying, just them bringing in the same crap that they always have done in the Saw films, where you have a new client come in, a new secret client, which we learned to be Dr. Gordon from the first film. Since he didn't die in the first film, the producers were probably like, oh, let's bring him back for some crazy twist that was kind of predictable, to be honest. I'm sure if you were really watching the Saw films and you knew about all the twists coming, this was going to be a very predictable twist. For me, it wasn't, because I still don't understand the storyline. So I thought the twist was okay in a sense, but it just became predictable, and at this point on, it wasn't needed. But do I like it? Yes, I do and I don't, So it was a pretty interesting twist bringing Dr. Gordon back. The traps were pretty gory, but at this point, the Saw had lost its main element that they had from the original Saw movies, and now Saw has just turned into this, who can make the goriest special effects and visual effects and whatnot. Don't get me wrong, the traps were pretty good, but it lost that main element that it had, and I think that's why it was hated, especially for the ending too. Man, I really loved Detective Hoffman, and I don't think he's ever going to come back after that twist unless they decide to, because technically we didn't see Detective Hoffman die, so, who knows, if they make another Saw film, they might bring him back. In fact, they were talking about making a new spin-off Saw film, I believe, called Spiral or something like that, so I would be interested in watching it to see if that happens, but I absolutely doubt it. I will say, though, Detective Hoffman, one of my favorite characters in the Saw films. Honestly, I would have 100% took Detective Hoffman over Detective Tapp in the Dead by Daylight game. As much as I like Detective Tapp, I so would have took Detective Hoffman as being a secret client for Kramer, and then he kind of tried to do his own thing and escape, or he tried to basically betray Kramer and get away with it and not die for it. But then, obviously Kramer was like, well, if he betrays you, you're going to get him back for it, and that's basically what the twist did. But I just absolutely loved Detective Hoffman's rampage at the end, and then he finally decides to put the original reverse bear trap on, and you get to see it in action. That was very, very cool. So I will say that the rampage for Detective Hoffman at the end was very good. So honestly, there's no Saw film that I just absolutely despised. It was just some of them were a step up above, just a little bit better as we go down the list, but nothing was super terrible, and I think this shows it, especially for one of the most hated Saw films. So let's get on to number 6. Number 6 is going to be Jigsaw. Now, obviously, a lot of the later Saw films are going to be lower in the list because it just starts to get more boring and more predictable, some of the twists that they did. And this twist, I didn't really understand it. It was one of those stupid twists, again, where we find out that he turned into a secret client for him, and he comes back, and it's a new excuse to bring Kramer back into the storyline, and that's exactly what they did in Jigsaw, and I just absolutely hated it. Very underwhelming. Some of the traps were actually pretty scary, especially when they hang the guy with the bucket head outside. I thought that was kind of creepy. I thought that was pretty cool. So the traps were not bad, especially that new laser trap at the end, too. That was pretty cool as well, but other than that, I felt it was just a very underwhelming sequel that people were long awaiting for, and I think after the final chapter, people were probably like, yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to bring it back with a fresh, good sequel, and they didn't really. That's all I have to say about Jigsaw, because I have not watched, I've watched like bits and pieces of Jigsaw because it's on TV a lot. This is like the only one that's on TV if it's not like close to Halloween. So I haven't really got the whole gist of what it's all about, but I basically understand what happens. So that's all I have to say for Jigsaw. All right, so at number 5, it is going to be Saw 5. So Saw 5, we had another opening trap for this one, where the battle axe was swinging and the guy had to escape the trap before it just chomped him in half. They do this a lot in the Saw films where they have like an opening trap at the beginning of the movie. This opening trap was pretty good, just like Saw 3. And the opening trap for Saw, the final chapter, I forgot to mention this, wasn't very good. I thought it was really, really weird, but still pretty scary. But as for Saw 5, the thing that I liked about Saw 5 was that it took what the other Saw movies did, like this unique formula that Saw 2 did, and Jigsaw did it, I believe, as well, and then there was one more Saw movie that did it. I think it was just Saw 2, Saw 5, and Jigsaw. Did the final chapter do it? No. So it was just Saw 5, Saw 2, and Jigsaw did the thing where you have a whole group together and one person gets eliminated one by one. This one, by far, in my opinion, did it the best way, despite Saw 2, of course, being better because it's up in the list, because there was only like 6 people to begin with, and it was just, how do I want to say this? It was just very, like, because there was, like, a little amount of people, it was simple, concise, and I really, really liked it, because then you actually had the chance to get character developments for some of these people, and you actually wanted this person to kill this person, and this person to kill this person, so it was actually quite enjoyable to watch somebody finally just be like, okay, I'm done with you, I'm just gonna kill you so that I can get onto this next trap. It was really cool. So Saw 5, I really like Saw 5 for doing that. So let's get on to number 4. Alright, so for number 4, this might come as a surprise. Some of you who have been paying attention to the list, I'm actually going to put Saw 6 above Saw 5. Saw 6 took what the final chapter failed at doing, and you had a protagonist that you followed throughout the film. Now, Saw 3 probably did the best at this. So it was Saw 3, the final chapter, and Saw 6 that all did the same thing. This was a different Saw formula that they did, where they take a main protagonist and you watch them go through traps one by one, trying to save or just killing them. And it doesn't matter. It's not going to decide their fate because it's not really on them. This one did a lot better than what the final chapter did, but I don't think it did better than what the Saw 3 did. But because Saw 3 had that boring element to it, that's what really held it back. But what I'm trying to say is that Saw 6 was just a better final chapter, because the protagonist at least wasn't really annoying. In the final chapter, you had a protagonist that was pretending to be a Saw victim. John Kramer catched on to this, and he basically, had him decide his fate. And this one, he was he worked for like an insurance company or something like that, and basically he was screwing people over so that he could get money and stuff like that. He basically scammed people with his insurance company and whatnot. So the people who were in the traps were his like employees and stuff like that. And at least, unlike the final chapter, I could actually like the protagonist, and he wasn't annoying in some of his traps. Although it was very, very satisfying to see Devin Bostick, I think it is. I think I probably said his last name wrong, but anyways, Devin Bostick, he plays as Roderick in Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and man, was it so satisfying seeing him kill the protagonist and getting his revenge on him by pouring that hydrofluoric acid on him. That was by far one of the coolest traps I've ever seen in Saw. So the traps were really, really good, and I think that's why I put Saw 6 here, was the protagonist was actually not very annoying. I could definitely deal with him. Not likable, but I could watch him, and I wasn't getting annoyed at him. I wasn't screaming at the camera when I was watching him go through the traps. So I thought that storyline was pretty interesting with Saw 6. The opening trap was pretty good, where they chop off the arms and the person who puts the most weight on the scale survives. That was very cool. So Saw 6, very great movie. Let's get on to number 3. All right, so for number 3 is going to be Saw 4. Saw 4 probably had the best formula out of all of these Saw movies, where they took one protagonist, and then you follow them throughout the films. They did Saw 4 definitely did better than Saw 3 at this. It did better at Saw 6, and it did better than Final Chapter at doing this. And our protagonist, the guy who was going through all the traps and deciding people's fate, was Detective Riggs. Now, if you guys have played the Dead by Daylight game, some of the outfits are actually from Detective Riggs on Saw 4. And Detective Riggs was really just the better Detective Tapp. He felt a lot like Detective Tapp, but we just got to see more of him. And at least when he died, it felt like he did something good. And it wasn't just that lame Detective Tapp kill in the first Saw movie. That it was just, oh my god. I'll talk about that more when I talk about the original Saw movie. But the thing I like about Saw 4 is it had similar characters to the original Saw movie, and they managed to do them better. And throughout all the traps, it was very satisfying to see him kill these criminals that did horrible things. And he basically just left it up to them to see if they could survive or whatnot. And then he did save a few other people, of course, but the nice thing is they killed off some of the people that you really didn't want to survive after knowing their history. The side story to this was Detective Hoffman and the guy from Saw 2 were in this room, and Detective Riggs had to get through the whole trial before the timer went off. Otherwise, the guy from Saw 2, the main character, a huge ice block would just smash his head, and it ended up happening. It was very cool. And obviously I love Detective Hoffman, so seeing him introduced in this film was very cool. He was not his best performance. The Final Chapter was definitely his best performance, but it was still cool seeing him in here. So even the side story, at least unlike Saw 3, the side story wasn't boring. It didn't drag along the story so long to the point where it was boring. So I really like Saw 4. Let's get on to I'm not going to spoil it. Let's get on to number 2. Alright, so for number 2, you guys probably knew this even though I didn't spoil it, is Saw 2, of course. Saw 2 was just your very what you want out of a sequel, and they did it just great. They took what the first Saw movie had, and just added more characters, more gore, more traps, and it worked. The formula worked, and they used a similar formula for many other Saw films to come, but this one probably did the best out of all of them, in my opinion. I really liked Saw 2, especially seeing Amanda Young. This was definitely her best performance out of all of these Saw movies, seeing her not be so cowardly, because even though you had some of these tougher characters that were a bit more cowardly, they didn't want to go through the traps to get the antidotes or whatnot, so one of the guys pushed Amanda into this like big bucket of syringes, and she had to find the antidote or whatever, and you got to see some characters that you didn't want to see live and die. Saw 2, I very much enjoyed it. I think Saw 5 did better in the whole group formula that they did for the Saw movies, but Saw 2 I think had better characters, and the side plot the subplot besides the traps was actually very cool. Seeing the officer get mad and not, like, you can feel the anger in him because he just wanted an answer out of John Kramer, and John Kramer in his head the whole time was probably like, man, your kid is literally sitting right next to you. And you learn that basically the officer thought that his kid was in a trap at the time, so he had to send his fellow officers to go try to save him, but it turns out that the trap was actually a pre-recorded video. So he basically baited John Kramer basically baited the father into going to the place, and then he got him trapped in there, and he ended up smashing his foot to get out, and then he comes back in the Saw 4. So that's how that happened. So the subplot was very interesting. You could feel the anger in the dad, and it was just really really annoying that when you found out that the kid was there the entire time. So, anyways, Saw 2, very great movie. All right, for number 1, it is, of course, the original Saw. Now, the original Saw is a great comparison to something like Halloween. Even though it doesn't have a lot of gore, even though it doesn't have a lot of kills, it had that element, that really cool element that the Saw movies created, where you basically put yourself into the situation and you ask yourself, what would you do in this situation? And it was just very cool seeing these two characters that didn't know each other, wondering what the hell they were doing in that bathroom and trying to figure out how to escape and whatnot. Dr. Gordon, very, very great character for the Saw films, and he came back in the final chapter. Obviously, wasn't the best twist, but it was still cool to see him come back. And I don't think there's much to talk about when it comes to the original Saw. Just a very, very great movie overall. And that's all I have to say about the Saw films. Alright, so hopefully you guys enjoyed another ranking. It has been a long time since I've done a horror movie ranking here on the channel. But I finally brainstormed an idea, and I was like, oh wait, I can rank the Saw films. So I finally did it, and if I watch, like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, all of the films over Halloween, I might rank those as well, because I don't really have a fresh memory on those as much as I do with something like Halloween or Scream or Paranormal Activity and stuff like that. But hopefully you guys enjoyed the ranking. Stay tuned for more content. There will be extra streams this weekend since it is spring break, so I'm very excited to stop by with you guys. And I'll be editing these videos throughout the week and posting them throughout the week, so you'll have video after video, hopefully. No promises, like I said. Make sure you join the Discord. The link will always be in the description. And read my community post for more information. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, guys. And I'll see you next time.